The following is an original production of AZPM News.
Coming up today on The Press Room, a special show looking at education in Tucson. We're looking at all ages and some critical decisions being made right now with two local journalists who cover the issue at every level. I'm David Lee, and The Press Room starts now. Welcome to The Press Room. I'm AZPM News Director David Lee, and joining me today we have Prerana Sannappanavar of the Arizona Daily Star, Noor Haghighi of AZPM News. Thank you both for joining us today. Earlier this year, the Arizona State School for Deaf and Blind announced they were closing their doors, but many wonder why. So AZPM investigates.
We have very deep roots in the community, very deep roots in the community. It is home for many of us, for deaf and blind children who have been through the programs.
Lisa Furr is a 1984 alum of the Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and Blind. She's one of many who are hoping to stop the relocation of a historic Tucson campus to Oro Valley. But after more than 100 years on West Speedway Boulevard, ASDB is on its way north, and community members are reeling with the effects. A combination of budget shortfalls, low enrollment of about 114 students, and deteriorating buildings on the 56-acre campus is making it difficult for the school to stay afloat. Here's District Superintendent Annette Reichman.
While the ASDB facilities team has done its best to keep both campuses safe and comfortable for staff and students, this is becoming less achievable, particularly on the Tucson campus.
It's an issue facing several school districts in Pima County. Continuously falling enrollment, brought on somewhat by the declining birth rate, is sinking the schools that depend on per-pupil funding from the state. A board vote on February 5th advanced ASDB's lease agreement with the Amphitheater School District that would move students to Copper Creek Elementary School, which AMPHI voted to close. It's about 15 miles away from ASDB's current campus, and according to AMPHI, has the capacity to hold more than 800 students.
ASDB parents have been left with a lot of unanswered questions in this process, which has unfolded in less than a month's time after families were notified of a potential relocation. Liza Smith is a mother of 3 children who are deaf. Smith says that her kids don't really understand what's going on.
A big concern for them is, are they going to make friends here? Are there going to be teachers going? I know a lot of staff, they're in the process of laying staff off, so I'm not sure if my kids are going to see the same teachers that they recognize.
Furr said that the isolation will be the biggest hurdle for the children.
They need role models that are also deaf and blind so that they don't grow up isolated. And if ASDB is closed, then they will struggle and be hurt even further.
During a January community meeting, parents submitted questions, but many ended up frustrated and speaking out of turn. 60 to 70 staff are expected to be laid off next year. One staff member at ASDB who wished to remain anonymous wrote to AZPM, stating, "On top of it all, my job is now on the line. I've yet to get answers to the most burning questions. Reichman is being very vague, and her total transparency is numb."
The outpouring of confusion was somewhat addressed in following meetings, but soon enough, new concerns arose. The proposal Reichman presented would separate blind and visually impaired students from their deaf peers. A group of ASDB families even filed a lawsuit against Reichman and the district, alleging the unlawful dismantling of programs for blind and visually impaired students.
The parents who filed the suit also accused the district of failing to provide timely and accessible notice of action. Donald Porterfield, who is the president of the National Federation of the Blind's Board of Directors, sent a letter to ASDB in January. The letter starts, "Our concerns are not about the decision to reorganize campuses or programs, but about the process, communication, and equity of planning for blind students as these changes move forward. When it came time for the board to vote, ASDB officials were met with resistance from families at a meeting in Phoenix.
One parent, Randall Kidd, called for more honesty from school officials.
However, if you make decisions on your own, how then do you expect the community to stand up and support you when you say that you're going to be transparent, yet the community has no communication or access? Please be transparent, communicate, and work with us. Thank you.
Donna Lambert is a social worker for ASDB and has been employed there for 25 years. She said financial issues are an agency responsibility, not something to burden students with.
For many students, it is the first place they have felt safe, understood, and able to truly learn. Many arrived after experiencing bullying, isolation, academic failure, and lack of access vision-specific instruction in public schools. On this campus, they are not surviving, they are thriving. They are building independence, confidence, and essential skills.
A week after the board meeting in early February, an ASDB board member from Tucson handed in his resignation. On February 16th, ASDB sent out a letter to parents confirming that visually impaired students would not be moving to Copper Creek alongside their deaf peers.
Each child deserves a good quality education that is fully accessible with equal access that allows them to participate fully in sports and academic and the social life of education with students that are like themselves.
Noor, some really good reporting from you and Thatcher Warwick-Hess. First, take me through how you heard about this whole story.
So I had been doing some reporting on the Amphitheater School District. They closed 4 of their elementary schools due to what they said were enrollment shortfalls as a result of a decline in birth rates across Pima County, and that's something we're seeing across the whole country. But anyways, in January, literally the morning after the amphitheater board voted to close those 4 schools, Annette Reichman, the superintendent of ASDB, announced on social media and online that Tucson campus will likely be relocating into Copper Creek Elementary School, which was one of the amphitheater elementary schools that were closing. And the whole time of deliberation before the amphitheater vote even came out, a lot of parents and families were wondering, like, what's going to even happen to these 4 elementary schools that are closing? Aren't we going to have to still pay for them and maintain them? And so as ASDB moves into Copper Creek, yes, that's partially true, but essentially what ASDB is going to be paying is the lease that they've signed for about 5 years, as well as utilities.
Okay, Prerana, I understand you did some reporting on this early in the stages. What were some of the responses hearing from the school community members as they heard of this news?
I think the biggest thing that I kept hearing was that the community wasn't involved in the decision making, and it was sort of being kept away from the community for a bit. And they kind of started hearing rumblings, students and parents did, around Christmas time, I want to say. And then obviously in January is when they started really understanding more and more about the fact that the school's moving. And then, you know, it's also about the fact that the Tucson campus offers dormitories. So it's not just about education. It's also about, you know, students who live far away, they get housing on the Tucson campus, which is not going to happen at the Oro Valley campus. So one of the things obviously was transparency. And I think the biggest things was concerns for the visually impaired students and the blind students, because they're not moving to the Oro Valley campus. And that was also something that was said to them after a while of them constantly asking these questions at the meetings.
Noor, was that a similar experience that you heard? I know in your reporting, you and Thatcher, there were a lot of parents who felt like we needed to say something and you needed to hear from us.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of parents did, and even staff, they thought, it kind of seemed to them like the school had their mind made up, basically, that no matter how much they spoke at call to the audience during these board meetings, their minds were made up, unfortunately. And what actually Thatcher and I heard recently from Katie Senko, she's the president of the Arizona Association for the Deaf. She was telling us some of the latest conversations from ASDB families are that they're thinking of moving. moving their whole families to Phoenix is one option. That's where the other ASDB campus is, and it's still up and running. Even to neighboring states, to Utah, New Mexico, California, where there are specialized schools for the deaf and blind, because here in Southern Arizona, the Tucson campus was really their only option. And like Prerana said, the dormitories are no longer offered, even though it was a small population occupying those dorms, which is why the district said, well, we don't have to go forward with that. But it still affects families.
So you alluded to a little bit of where we're at now. Where are we kind of as of, today moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the school's relocating.
Yeah.
It's a done deal. Like I said, parents are still thinking of where to send their students. Katie Sanko told us, especially the visually impaired and blind students are, she said, quote, pissed off. A lot of the younger students are just confused by what's happening, and they're fearful of bullying, frankly, because the students, the visually impaired ones who are going to TUSD campuses, actually, they're worried that they're going to have to assimilate to a group of students that maybe doesn't understand what they're going. They certainly don't understand what they're going through.
Is the school district doing anything to, I guess, ease the transition, or are they, saying, hey, we're going to figure out something to help this, happen?
Well, one thing that they've said is each family is going to sit down with the school, have what's called an individualized education program meeting, an IEP meeting. Okay. That's sort of required by law, basically. Some parents have said they actually have not had those meetings yet. As of, I believe, March 12th was the last board meeting. Some parents told me we still haven't had our IEP meeting. And what that IEP meeting is all about is looking at the plan forward, deciding how do we optimize this situation for my student? What are their needs going forward? Okay.
There are also some changes coming to the University of Arizona's admissions policy. Prerana, you did some reporting recently stating that the applications are down. Talk to me a little bit more of what you discovered.
So there's a couple of things. The first crux of this whole thing is that the University of Arizona has changed its admissions process just a little bit. Okay. It used to be a rolling admissions model, which basically means that they review applications as they come in throughout the fall of last year and spring of this year for fall 2026. And there's no hard deadline. But now what the university is doing is early action, which means that there is one hard deadline on November 1st. Okay. And decisions for that November 1st deadline go out on January 15th. And after that, they go back to a rolling admissions model where they keep getting and reviewing applications. So that's the change. And what that has led to is a couple of concerns amongst faculty. One of it is that this has reduced application numbers, or just there's like a reduction in application numbers. And that's augmented also by the decline in, people wanting to go to college as well, nationwide. Sure. Also, one of the concerns was transparency. This whole change requires a lot of communication internally to deans, to colleges, faculty, and externally to community members like high schools and, community colleges and just parents who are interested in sending their students to school. So that's also been a concern. And also, I think the larger concern is that if this kind of admissions model continues, then it might lead to disadvantaging certain first-generation students, students of color, just students from marginalized communities who need more support.
Okay. There also, in your reporting, seems to be some disagreement or information that doesn't seem to jibe between both the president and what faculty are hearing in terms of the numbers as well.
Yes, for sure. I think what faculty keeps hearing from community members, because so many of the faculty members are outside in the community, they have friends and, neighbors who are sending their kids to the UFA to apply. And then there's, administration, the enrollment office, the provost, the president, who are kind of talking about different things. So one of the numbers that we heard at the March Faculty Senate meeting was the president said that by March, which was March 2nd, Faculty Senate meeting, the university had received about 35,000 to 37,000 applications. What I heard from a person who has close knowledge of admissions who requested anonymity was that the university needed 40,000 applications by the November 1st deadline.
Okay.
But what they got was about 25,000. So just in general, like a significant decline. And also, in addition to lesser application numbers, there's two more things. One is that community members are saying that the UFA is accepting lesser applications. And also, then there's the problem of the yield rate. So yield is after a student is accepted, how many of them actually choose to enroll. So there's lesser applications, what community members say is lesser acceptances, and then there's lesser enrollment too. So overall, I think what faculty members are concerned about is that there's not going to be right-sized classes coming fall. There's going to be like lesser students in classes.
What is the plan, I guess, overall for the university moving forward?
I think what I keep hearing from the provost, from the enrollment office, and administration in general is that they're receiving more and more applications every single day. They continue to admit students, and just kind of going back to what their side of the story is. What they're saying is that they're still accepting students who meet ABOR requirements, and ABOR is the Arizona Board of Regents that oversees Arizona's public universities, and their standards is a 3.0 GPA or students who are in the top 25% class. So they're saying, administration is saying that they're still accepting these students, but at the same time, the president went on and said that the average GPA of students that they're accepting is 3.6, which is higher than previous years. And then just anecdotally, what faculty members are hearing is, even students who have a 3.7 GPA are not getting in, or, students who definitely thought that they would have gotten in past years, or who this year are getting into ASU or NAU are not getting into the UFA. So this is all anecdotal, but that's where the dissonance is between the two perspectives.
Okay, Noor, there also seems to be some issues on campus regarding changes to honorary degrees and how those are being handed out. You did some reporting on that.
Yeah, both Prerana and I kind of looked into this issue, a bit of drama with the Faculty Senate. Chair Layla Hudson has called out multiple times the U of A President Suresh Garamella's new policies on who gets to decide or who gets to nominate honorary degree recipients at the end of the year. Typically, that process is usually done with the Faculty Senate, which is an elected body. This year, things are different. The president is appointing 9 members of the faculty individually, so that kind of steps away from the Faculty Senate's role as a unified body, making this decision, and that's what Chair Hudson's gripe is pretty much with. So she's said, I'm not going to participate in this nomination process. She's also not going to participate in her typical role during commencement, carrying the mace. So she's, in ways like protesting this decision. She's also going to, she says she's in a letter to President Garamella, she says she will be notifying the degree recipients of this breach of protocol, is what she says.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the Tucson Unified School District for a little bit, Noor. Still working on getting their budgets all locked in. Where are some of the overall cuts coming from?
Yeah, some of the biggest cuts are going to be in transportation, plant maintenance, and central services. That the latest cuts will contribute to the around $10 million that the district is cutting just for next school year. And that's in an effort to chip away at a greater $27 million deficit that they project by 2030. So in the next 4 years, they've got to start cutting significant amounts from their budgets. Again, this is an issue of enrollment, somewhat an issue of enrollment, also an issue of just funding from the state, a lack of funding, frankly, from the state. The issue with transportation is a lot of what the district heard from a feedback survey had to do with transportation. Families and students saying, do not take away our transportation services, because TUSD is a huge district. It's the biggest district in Pima County. It's very spread out. So a student at the east end might be going to school on the west end of the district, and they need transportation. The district has said the cuts that are happening to transportation, however, will not affect students very much.
Okay.
It's going to be mostly cutting the out of district routes, and also cutting the equivalent of 25 full-time employees. That's monitors and drivers, bus drivers. However, I think it could be an issue moving forward, between how students and families feel, because, for example, I've heard from multiple people at Pueblo High School, they don't even have bus transportation to begin with. So those students are relying on either walking back home or taking city transportation. So to see that the transportation services are depleting even further might be a problem.
Okay, I'm going to take an overall look at something when it comes to possible shutdowns in just education and schools in particular. You're looking for budgets, you're trying to trim things, a lot of things, and it's not just in Tucson. They'll look to cut a school, right, and reassign everybody. I guess the question is, at the K through 12 level, those are big changes for students and families and the community. How is that affecting them? And then does that affect at all any incoming issues with, community college and university? So let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, school choice is a very intentional choice for families. Families don't necessarily just send their kid to the school next door, unless, of course, they make the choice to move to that neighborhood because they want to send their kid to that school. And that was the case with a lot of the amphitheater families, especially at Copper Creek Elementary School. They chose to move to that school so they could literally cross the street and send their kid to that A-rated school. I mean, a lot of the feedback and calls to the audience responses that have come out of the amphitheater school district and the ASDB closures people have said a school is not just a building. It's where a student grows not only academically, socially, emotionally. They build connections. They make their lifelong friends. They build mentorship with their teachers. They have, in some cases like ASDB, they have specialized services that they can get nowhere else. So it's a big deal to close a school. And it's, for a lot of families, it's been sad, frankly, to see their schools close.
Prerana, do you think that it shuts the dream of going to college and affect the numbers there? Possibly if a school shuts down, if we're not getting the same kind of students applying.
I think for sure, like Noor said, school forms the foundation. It's the foundation of learning. They kind of get their core classes going and the core kind of studies that they're going to build off of in college. And I mean, I can't speak specifically to, University of Arizona or Pima Community College over here, but just in general, I think universities across the country, across Arizona, are seeing declining enrollment. And there's lots of aspects to this. One of it is also how expensive it is to go to school.
Sure.
To do your undergrad. But also I think the other part of it is the demographic cliff, which is the decline in 18-year-olds after there was a decline in birth rate during the 2008 Great Recession. So the cascading effects of that is leading to lesser 18-year-olds who are, kind of wanting to go to college. And, if we just look at ASDB, when I was covering that earlier this year, there were lots of parents and students who were talking about how ASDB and the specialized services and the kind of community that it creates for differently abled kids who are visually impaired, it just kind of gives them such a great foundation. It makes them feel accepted. They can make friends, like Noor said, and lots of them did talk about bullying and stuff, and that really does stunt education and learning experience also, because it's so much about peer learning. And obviously cascading effects of that into, higher education.
All right, quickly, we do our viewer question here at this time. Again, just a reminder, you can send in your question to azpm.org/pressroom, or you can comment on our YouTube channel or, Facebook or Instagram. Just send us a question. This week's question comes from our Facebook group user, Camille Kirschner, and it references some reporting that you did, Noor, a while back regarding dismantling of cultural housing communities at the U of A. Not a lot of time here, but the question is, do these students not deserve a well-rounded college experience, not to mention the peer support for those who must benefit from these types of programs?
Sure. So the university's response to closing these cultural housing communities has been that internal data shows they're not contributing to graduation rates and, academic things like that. In response to that, I think a lot of students, and they have told me that the students that have been part of these communities, that academics is not everything.
Yeah.
When you're coming to university, again, like you are looking for community, especially those marginalized communities like Indigenous youth and LGBTQ youth. Yeah, they need to find their safe spaces.
All right, Noor, Prerana, thank you very much for having this enlightened conversation. Really appreciate it. And thank you at home for watching and listening to the program. I'm David Lee, AZPM News Director. This is The Press Room. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching The Press Room here on YouTube. If you have a question about something we talked about, please leave a comment below. And for more Press Room, click right here.